Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's IAOP webinar. It's on the Falsified Medicines Directive, FMD, and it's a refresher and an update on recent developments. So I'm sure many of you have been to IAOP webinars in the past, but just for the sake of the domestics this evening, this is being recorded. The recording will be posted onto the IAOP website in a few days. We'd be grateful if you could keep your microphones muted, and it's up to you whether you want your cameras on or off. Please do put questions into the chat. We'll be taking questions at the end, but of course, if you have a question, do pop it in as we go, but it might be addressed at the end. If you're having any IT issues, we do have a support from the IAOP here this evening. Grace joins us on the call. But often the best thing to do is leave and come back again. So we'll be sharing a feedback survey as well, and we'd be very grateful if you could complete that in your own time as well, and we'll post details to that in a moment. There, it's gone into the chat now, and we'll remind you at the conclusion of the webinar again about that. So without further ado then, I'd like to introduce you to Leonie Clarke. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Leonie. Leonie is the Chief Executive of the Irish Medicines Verification Organisation, and she'll take you through the presentation this evening. I'll be here. My name is Clarke Kennedy. I'm a peer support pharmacist at the IAOP, and I'll be facilitating questions towards the conclusion of the webinar as well. Thanks very much, Leonie. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Mary Claire, and good evening, everyone, and nice to see you all here. I'm just going to share my screen. I'll just get my slides up and running. Okay, can I just check everyone can see those?
Perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Leonie.
So we're just going to minimize this. Okay, perfect. Okay, so very briefly, I am going to run you through a range of topics this evening. A quick recap of FMD, where are we now, some practical tips. I'm going to give you, just to go through recent PSI FMD inspections and some of the learnings from those. I want to talk to you a little bit about, I suppose, some of the new things that have been happening over the last 12 months, including a new IMVO corporate strategy and where that would be relevant to the community and hospital pharmacists on a day-to-day basis. A little bit about the revision of the EU pharma legislation. I know Ellen McGrath from the HPRA mentioned that a couple of weeks ago when she did the shortages webinar, and I'm going to mention it as well. And then the support available from IMVO and Q&A and some backup slides, then just with some additional information. I know a number of you did submit questions before the webinar, so what I have done is gone through all those questions, and I think I've answered them all in the slides. But if there's any questions, you feel haven't been answered fully, if there's any more information you want, just pop questions into the chat at the end, or happy to go off mute. I'm very happy to go through those. So very briefly, recap of FMD. So FMD obviously means Falsified Medicines Directives. This was a 2011 directive which introduced a number of measures to tackle the growing threat of falsified medicines and ensure trade in medicines in Europe is rigorously controlled. Now, a lot of people would say, well, there are no falsified medicines in Europe. There's not a lot of falsified medicines in Europe. There are some falsified medicines in Europe, but I think the sense was it was becoming necessary to protect Europe from this growing threat, hence the Falsified Medicines Directive. So the directive had a number of provisions in it, including what we call safety features on the outer packaging of medicines, and this is the 2D barcode and the anti-tamper device that you're now familiar with. The common EU-wide logo for online, legal online pharmacies and medicines retailers, and I've just shown you the logo there on the right-hand side. In terms of active pharmaceutical ingredients or APIs, traditionally they would have been not controlled to the same extent as finished products, so tighter controls on and inspections of the producers of APIs were introduced to try and control every end of the manufacturing chain. And then finally, additional requirement for wholesalers, including extra record keeping. We then had a piece of legislation called the Commission Delegated Regulation in 2016, it's sometimes shortened to DR. And that really sets out for the safety features element of the Falsified Medicines Directive, and in particular the 2D barcode, how all of that was to work, and how the European Medicines Verification System, or as they call it in the legislation, the repository system, was to operate. More importantly, I think for all of us who work in this space, it actually spells out the legal obligations of things like ourselves, the National Medicines Verification Organisations, or NMVOs as we call ourselves. So, what we do is described in a chapter of this legislation, all our legal obligations. It also set out the legal obligation of manufacturers and marketing authorization holders, wholesalers, pharmacies, and hospitals. So things like the obligation to scan, the obligation, things like the 10-day restriction and recommissioning packs, these are all contained in the delegated regulations. This is European legislation that applies across Europe. So in terms of how the European Medicines Verification System works, so the EMVS, so it's a system with multiple components covering 30 countries. So we have 26 EU countries. Italy are due to join later this year. Italy, Greece, and Belgium got a special derogation from going live in 2019 because they already had serialization systems for medicines. So Belgium actually at the time decided to switch over to the new EU system along with the rest of Europe joining it. Greece is now up and running since February this year, and Italy, they're taking their time, I think would be the best way to describe it, but we gather they're expecting to join by the end of the year. We have 3 EEA countries, so that's Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland. We have Switzerland, who have a joint system with Liechtenstein. And then finally, and this was the biggest development since the last time I did this webinar a year ago, the UK system was disconnected from the EMVS at the end of last year due to the Windsor Framework, which basically discontinued the application of FMD in Northern Ireland. And not only was the UK system disconnected, but all the data in it has been permanently deleted, so it's gone forever. The UK have not replaced their EU FMD system with an equivalent UK system. There are plans, there is legislation that allows one to be set up, but there's no plans at the moment for that to be done. So we're all just going to wait and see. So it's quite interesting that the UK is one of the few countries in Europe that actually doesn't have some sort of a medicines verification system in place anymore. So coming back then to the EMVS, so it's kind of a hub and spoke model. So at the heart of it, we have the European hub managed by IMVO, European Medicines Verification Organisation. We weren't very exciting in our name choices. And connected to that, you've all the national systems in all these different countries, including our own Irish Medicines Verification System. The European Hub is also the point of entry for data to the system from manufacturers and parallel distributors. The manufacturers, obviously, when they make the original packs, and then parallel distributors, when they repack, they have to apply new barcodes, and that data has to be uploaded to the system. The reason why there's a central point of upload is twofold. One, to avoid the need for them to have to be dealing with 30 different systems uploading data, and also from a security point of view, to keep the access to getting data into the system very tight, keep the number of entry points low from a security point of view, it keeps the counterfeiters at bay. In terms of how the national systems work then, we have pharmacies, hospitals and wholesalers connected at national level here in Ireland, and the same in every other country. And when you scan a pack here in Ireland, the pack data sits in the Irish system, and then you scan the pack, it finds the pack, it verifies that it's the right pack, and then it decommissions it if that's what you want. The beauty of the way the system is constructed is if the data can't be found in the Irish system, the system will send a message to the European Hub. The European Hub will say, okay, let's go and look for that batch. We'll identify what market it's in, and we'll go and find that pack and can decommission. So say if you have a French exempt medicinal product or ULM that comes in, say some sort of a eutrogestin, they can be decommissioned in the Irish. You can decommission them here in Ireland via that query to the European Hub. So this is one of the reasons why, and I will come back to this repeatedly during the webinar, the impact of the UK system being disconnected. So prior to the end of last year, if you scanned a UK pack, the data was there in the system. It was accessible via this EU hub, and those packs basically scanned fine. The problem is now there is no UK system. So if you try and scan it, doesn't find it in our system, hub can't find it, and we run into problems and you will get an alert. But I'll come back to that in more details in a few minutes. So I'm just going to go through the roles and responsibilities of different parties, and I suppose I'm starting with IMVO, and one of the reasons I'm putting ourselves first and we'll describe our role is because we get a lot of people. A lot of people think we're they think what we're called the FMD police in some quarters. We have no enforcement role. We're not an enforcement body. Our job is to set up the system, manage the system, and ensure it operates smoothly as a part of the European Medicines Verification System. So if you think about it, going back to this model, when you've lots of different components, all different standalone systems with different suppliers, you have to do a lot of work to make sure the whole system works together smoothly. So we spend a lot of our time working with colleagues in other countries, ensuring that that is the case. We're here to support pharmacies, hospitals, and wholesalers, and they're collectively described as end users, just as the terminology we use, to connect to the system and assist with any problems that arise. And from an IMVO board perspective, so our board is made up of directors appointed by our 5 members, who include the IPU, Pharmaceutical Distributor Federation, which is basically Uniphar and United Drug, IPHA, Medicines for Ireland, and Affordable Medicines Ireland, which represents the parallel distributors. So their priority is that we will make a lot of resources available to try and make the use of the application of FMD in Ireland as smooth as possible for pharmacies, hospitals, and wholesalers. We also then work with end users and with marketing authorization holders of the pharma companies and the MAHs to minimise avoidable alerts, because you can save a lot of trouble by just taking some steps to avoid alerts. And then the last piece is actually taken directly from the delegated regulation. We're required to provide for the immediate investigation of all alerts that represent potential incidents of falsifications, ensure the HPRA, European Medicines Agency, and EU Commission are notified should the falsification be confirmed. And there is guidance at European level that says the word proviso means we don't have to do all the investigating, but we have to make sure that all the different parties involved are looking into it, and then we pull together the information to try and get a picture of whether or not an alert that has been generated indicates a falsified pack, or is more often than not, as you know, some sort of a technical or so-called false alert. Moving on then, the Department of Health is involved, and we would meet very regularly with the Department of Health. So we actually meet about 3 times a year formally with the Department of Health, the HPRA and the PSI, via a group called the Safety Features Oversight Group. So we have the HSE in there as well, to review what's happening with FMD in Ireland. But we also have individual meetings with the department from time to time. And in fact, we were in with them yesterday, training them. They have a lot of new staff in their medicines unit, training them on FMD. So the department is responsible for legislation policy relating to safety features for the scope for national decisions. They're also accountable to the EU Commission for any non-compliance with EU legislation. So if parties here in Ireland are not meeting their obligations, it's ultimately the department will be called to account for this. We then have what's called National Competent Authorities, or NCAs is the jargon that tends to be used, and they're responsible for supervising the IMVS and ensuring that all parties comply with their obligations. So that is split across 2 NCAs. We have the HPRA. They oversee compliance by manufacturers, MAHs, wholesalers, and ourselves. So we're subject to supervision by the HPRA. They lead the investigation of if falsified medicines are identified. And they also take the lead in the whole area of illegal medicines. So detaining and closing down suppliers of illegal medicines and other healthcare products, working with Garda Síochána, revenue, etc. And the reason I want to flag that one is we got one question just asked, what was IMVO doing about a WhatsApp group that was flagging that antibiotics were for sale? We don't have any role in relation to that. That's very much in the bailiwick of the HPRA. So those types of incidents need to be brought to the attention of the HPRA. Now, there's a certain whack-a-mole quality about what they're trying to do with these illegal suppliers of medicines, and you do see from time to time they publish the data on the number of seizures of illegal medicines that they're bringing in from online retailers and various other parties. But they are constantly, so anything you come across that looks like an illegal seller of medicines, bring it to the HPRA's attention. The PSI then, it's responsible for overseeing compliance by retail pharmacy businesses and pharmacists. So that explains why there are FMD inspections and a focus on decommissioning by the PSI. And they also maintain the register of online retailers of medicines that's required by the Falsified Medicines Directive. Manufacturers and MAH, so their job is basically to make the packs with the 2D barcodes and the anti-tampering devices and ensure that the data is correctly uploaded to the EMVS for all markets in which the products are marketed or sold. So say, for example, if you had a joint Ireland-Malta pack, when they upload that data to the European hub, they'll tell the hub that data is to be sent to Malta and to Ireland, because the packs from batches from that for that product could be sold in either market. They also get involved in the investigation of alerts on their own products. So they get sent details of every alert that's generated in any of their products, and then they follow up with the HPRA in the case of falsifications. And in that scenario, the MAH will be very heavily involved. They'll be going back to their batch records, the manufacturing records, they'll be analysing samples. All of these big pharma companies have security teams chasing down falsifications and counterfeit products, so they will all get involved at that point. Wholesalers, this is another thing that we hear from time to time. Why do I have to scan packs? Because the wholesalers check them all. So the wholesalers don't check all the packs, and they're not required to check all the packs that pass through their warehouses. They're only required to verify the following. So returns from customers. So if you send them back a return, they're required to verify that pack on the way in to make sure that the pack is still active. They can't return decommissioned packs to stock. So this is very important. If you have medicines that you've ordered in that you discover afterwards that you don't need, and say you've made up the prescription and the patient comes back and says, I don't need it, really important that you recommission that pack as soon as possible. And you can only do that within 10 days after the original decommissioning. And again, that's written into the delegated regulation. We have no flexibility in that. We get people bringing us all the time. Can you do something about that? We can't do that. The system by design is hardwired to prevent you recommissioning the pack after 10 days because of the legislative requirement. So really important, if you dispense medicines in advance at the start of the month and there's any potential likelihood those medicines won't be needed and you wanted to return them to the wholesaler, that you keep an eye on them and you make sure you recommission them within the 10-day windows, that you would be in a position to send them back to the wholesaler. Packs then, the wholesalers are also required to verify if they receive packs from a supplier other than the manufacturer, the MAH, or their designated wholesaler. That being the MAH's designated wholesaler. So that would be something like maybe a wholesaler that they've signed a contract with to store the products for them here in Ireland. The reason why that's there, it's kind of taking the view, well, if the product is coming directly from the manufacturer to the wholesaler, the risk is lower than if it goes through multiple different suppliers, wholesalers en route. Now, so the wholesalers, these are the situations when they verify packs. We do know that most of the wholesalers, they will do on behalf of the manufacturer at goods inwards, when they receive the packs into the country, they will do one or two verifications of packs on the pallet to make sure that the data has been uploaded, and that'll often be written into the agreements that they have with the manufacturers. And what that does is just make sure that the data is in the system so that when those packs are released into the market, we don't run into problems with data not being uploaded. And that has worked really well. And we see very few alerts now because of data not being uploaded. Those issues are largely gone away now. Wholesalers are also required to decommission packs as destroyed. So when they're destroying them, if they're stolen. Now, obviously, you can't scan a pack that's stolen, but you may have kept the unique identifiers on file and you can manually enter them. So say if you had very high value packs, you might do that. Locked then is quarantined. So if they've been asked to quarantine a batch for whatever reason, they can mark it as locked. Wholesalers are also required to decommission packs applied to what we call Article 23 locations. And Article 23 actually comes from Article 23 of the delegated regulation. And it basically gives member states to assign various parties who are exempt from the decommissioning requirement. And there's a long list of entities in the delegated regulation, and member states can then decide which ones apply locally. So pretty much they all apply here in Ireland. And these would include GPs, prisons, vets, if they're being supplied with human medicines for animal use under a cascade, etc. And obviously the wholesalers have to investigate alerts generated in the wholesalers to make sure packs are authentic. From a pharmacy and hospital point of view, the requirement is to authenticate the packs prior to supply to patients by scanning the 2D barcode and checking the anti-tampering device. And that again is the legal requirement per the delegated regulation. If the scan generates an alert, follow-up action is required and the pack must be withheld from supply until falsification has been ruled out. Obviously, if the pack has been tampered with, you can't supply the pack, and HPRA have asked that these be reported as suspected quality defects via the HPRA's online reporting system. I think it's really important in terms of, we are aware from time to time, sometimes we phone pharmacies to follow up on alerts because we've had a request from the manufacturer, and we do find from time to time alerts have been generated, nobody's quite sure why, and the pack has been dispensed to a patient. It's really important to remember, yes, the risk of a falsified pack entering the legal supply chain is low, but it is a real risk. So it's not a zero risk. And at some point, if you ignore alerts and you hand out packs without being absolutely sure that the root cause has been found, either on your side or by talking to ourselves or by waiting to hear what the manufacturer has to say, you could hand out a fake pack. So, we need to be mindful of the fact that we assume all alerts are technical procedural alerts, but an alert could be an alert because the pack has been falsified. So it's just something to keep in mind. I'm just going to explain a little bit about scan responses because we had some questions about this and I thought it might be no harm to sort of explain what you need to do and what's alerts and what's not alerts and why you get emails for some and not for others, because that was one of the questions asked. So when you verify or decommission pack, basically your FMD software displays a response on screen which contains text and it's color coded. So we introduced the color coding requirements, and we have basically given the FMD software providers a set of instructions on how to code these. And it, depending on the outcome of the scan. So basically, if it's green is fine, you can go ahead. Amber or red, you need to stop and wait. So the alerts are the potential falsifications. So certain red and amber responses represent potential falsifications and are known as alerts. So for example, you might get a red pack is expired. So that's not going to be alert. Simply, you can't supply that pack because it's expired. But most of the reds are alerts. How you will recognize an alert that is a potential falsification and requires to be investigated before you supply the pack is, first of all, your FMD software will tell you, it will use the phrase an alert has been raised. You will see a unique alert ID in the message, and then shortly afterwards you will receive an email from IMVO's alert management systems, NMBS alerts, for these alerts. And this will give you a link to a page where we will give you information that we have about the alert, and the MAH can also enter whatever information they have about the alert, and you can enter any information you have about the alert. And we can all different parties can then look and see, okay, can we now close this alert, or is it something that needs to be escalated? As I've mentioned, I already told you the MAHs get all these alerts, but they're also automatically notified to ourselves and they're notified to the HPRA as well. These alerts have to be investigated to establish a root cause, and falsification must be ruled out before the pack can be supplied. All the other scan responses are known as exceptions. So I want to give you some examples of amber exceptions. So if you get the scan message product code not known, that will generally happen if you get a barcode in a non-FMD pack with scans. So the problem now with all medical devices could carry 2D barcodes, which is, to be honest, a nuisance. It really confuses matters. You could have an OTC pack with a 2D barcode, and you could get an EMP, exempt medicine product, or non-licensed medicines from outside the EU. The batch has been recalled, and the pack has been recalled. The pack cannot be reactivated. The time limit exceeded. The recalls here is more than 10 days have elapsed since the pack was decommissioned. The last one then is what we call a Windsor Framework related exception, and this would have been seen from the 1st of January this year. And it would have said something like the product code or batch is unknown locally, intermarket communication error, do not retry. Now, I appreciate that language is very unhelpful. In fact, we're going to change it in the next release. We were given this wording on high from Europe and told we couldn't change it, but we've now decided we're going to make it a bit more user-friendly. You will get that message for a UK pack that had previously been uploaded to the UK system prior to the 1st of January. So this was a pack that was in the UK, on the market in the UK, in the MVS before the 1st of January. So the system, there's a kind of a trace of the pack at a hub level. In this situation, you can you can supply the pack unless you've overriding concerns may be falsified, has been tampered with, or it has expired. For the other ones, we just ask you to follow the advice in the IMVO help page, which will be linked from your FMD software. And if you need help, just give us a call. You won't get any NMBS alert emails about these exceptions, and you don't need to tell us about the outcome of your own investigation. So they're different to the full-blown alerts. So for the UK packs that you were scanning, particularly in the early part of this year, you would have seen these amber exceptions. And I did read somewhere recently, someone had noticed that these ambers for the UK packs were starting to turn red. And this is the reason why. I'm going to explain on the next slide. Batch not found, that's one of the classic alert categories you get. So it sometimes can be a scanner issue, it can sometimes be, most likely, now all of these could be falsified medicines, just to be clear about this, but the most likely root cause is scanner, software issue, the data not uploaded. You will also now get these batch not found red alerts for UK packs that were placed on the market after the 1st of January. So it's quite, we realise this is completely messy, but unfortunately, this is just the way things are with the Windsor Framework. It's just been a complete and utter disaster from an FMD perspective. So if you're supplying a UK pack and you scan it, that was around and about before December last year, you'll get an amber exception. If you get a red exception, since then, the pack that's been put on the market since then, they are the ones, they're not causing alerts. Now, the what to do next tells you what to do. And in fact, I should have updated this box of information. For the UK packs, you can go ahead and supply them unless you've reason to believe they've been falsified. But everything else, you do have to go through all the steps and you have to definitively rule out falsification. The other one you might find is pack not found or serial number is unknown. There varies again, scanner or software. Pack already decommissioned in another location. That could be a procedural error. It could also be a falsified medicine. I'll come back to this one later, and so on and so on. So they're examples of red alerts. But I say rather than get into the detail of each of these, we do give you a link from your FMD software to a help page that will actually talk you through for the particular alert type what's going on and what to look for. And there's a kind of a graphical version of the whole thing. So green, supply, amber, check the message, link to the help page, then decide what to do based on the apply. What happens? Red, then you will get an NMBS alerts one-time message if it's a full-blown alert. And then if you've got any feedback, you need to give that to us, and you can write that into NMBS alerts. But again, I'll come back to that later. Okay, so very briefly, where are we now? I think over the last 6 years since this went live, we've been continuously improving the EMVS, including the IMVS, to enhance the user experience, to improve performance and eliminate system-related alerts. And I think we're very pleased with the fact the system is very stable and there are very few delays or downtime. The alert rate in Ireland was doing really well up until the end of last year, but unfortunately, since the start of January this year, it has started to rise, and I'll show you that in a moment. The decommission rates are improving, but we're still not close to full scan. Again, I'll show you the figures there. I think we do a lot of communication to people about the issues we see in order to help prevent further alerts. So if, for example, we spot, and this can happen, we suddenly notice a whole pile of alerts in a pharmacy, and we might say, oh, they look like alerts that show someone has the caps lock on. We'll ring the pharmacy and say, look, we think you have your caps lock on, will you turn it off, please? And it just saves more alerts. In turn, we have found much greater engagement from pharmacies and hospitals. We've always had good engagement from wholesalers and manufacturers, MAHs, but certainly a lot more phone calls, a lot of people asking questions, and it's great because we have people available to answer those questions. And we are seeing greater usage of NMBS alerts to provide feedback on alerts. The European Medicines Verification System is huge. As I've mentioned, it covers 30 countries. There are 14 billion transactions per year across Europe. And, while we're not finding lots of fake medicines, I think it has to be understood that, if you're all these transactions going on, it is making Europe a very unattractive place for counterfeiters. 115,000 community pharmacies, nearly 3,000 MAHs, 4,000 wholesalers and 6,000 hospitals, all connected using this system across Europe. On the Irish side, we currently have 375 MAHs registered with us. It's funny, I've been working in the sort of pharma sector for probably the last 30 years, and we sign contracts with these MAHs and they just keep coming, and we keep signing contracts with MAHs. I've never heard it before. I would never have thought there were so many MAHs active in the Irish market, but there are. We also have registered with us 1902 pharmacies, 101 hospitals. Now, some of those hospitals, if the PSI were to look at their number of retail pharmacy businesses, would actually, we separate out the pharmacies and the hospitals. So quite a large number of those hospitals do have retail pharmacy business registrations. 96 wholesalers, again, everyone would have thought maybe Uniphar and United Drug and a few more, but no, there are lots and lots of wholesalers there. And two other, I think one of them is a clinical research organisation and one is a private dialysis clinic. Just looking at the alert rate, our alert rate was doing really well at the back end of last year, but as the year has gone on, it has gone up, but that is largely due to scanning of UK packs and the fact that those UK packs are now generating these red alerts instead of the amber exceptions that we would have seen at the start of the year. So the alert rate, just to summarise, it's been driven by scanning of UK single market packs, as all these packs generate alerts or exceptions since the Windsor Framework, because there is no UK system to check them against. We have, at the back end of last year, we did do a lot of communications advising people that the only way to stop this was not to scan the packs. That remains the advice, unfortunately, because technically we really can't see any technical solution to make this go away, unfortunately. It's just one of those really unfortunate byproducts of Brexit that we are foisted with in this country. And it goes back to as well the underlying issue we have of shortages in this country, medicines availability issues, with a lot of those gaps being met by packs sourced from the UK. The other problem that we have is the UK packs continue to carry barcodes. The MHRA in the UK has said that they can carry barcodes so long as they're not recognised by the EMVS, which is the case because the data is gone. we have explored, are there any plans to take these barcodes off? And most of the manufacturers intend to keep them on because the barcodes are used widely for stock management. They're used very widely for things like NHS scan for safety initiatives. So it is unlikely that these barcodes will be removed from the UK pack. So long as UK packs continue to come into Ireland, they will carry 2D barcodes, most of them. If we were to exclude the UK packs and all the other exempt medicinal products and ULMs, and we do see occasional procedure error spikes. So, for example, we had one situation a few months ago where one wholesaler accidentally managed to double scan a whole pile of vaccines that they were doing under Article 23, and we got 1,000 alerts in a day. That can happen, and no one gets too excited about that. You just need to review your procedures to make sure it doesn't happen again. So when we exclude those factors, our alert rate would be consistently in the region of 0.01 to 0.2%. So that's alerts as a percentage of the total number of scans, which shows that the controllable factors are really well managed. Like we might see 10 software issues a week, 10 errors related with scanners. We see very few errors due to data being uploaded, it's just unfortunate that we have up these other factors. So the medicine shortages, availability issues are driving the alerts, the reliance on the packs sourced in the UK, because all those packs now generate alerts or exceptions, and more alerts. We also see a lot of borrowings between pharmacies. We see borrowings between pharmacies in the same area. We see borrowings between pharmacies in the same group. And, sometimes we wonder, why are these packs coming in a decommissioned state from one pharmacy to the other? Not quite sure why, whether people are choosing to decommission goods inwards, which legally the delegated regulation says pharmacies are required to decommission at the point of supply. The delegated regulation does allow hospitals to decommission goods inwards. So again, that's not something that we have any control over. But the problem is, if you have a pack that's decommissioned and you send it to another pharmacy, they're going to get an alert when they scan it again. So we get quite a few of those alerts every week. We do sometimes see errors due to wholesaler issues, not a huge number, but some of them can be things like hospital aggregation. So you may or may not be aware that the big wholesalers provide a paid service to the HSE and some of the private hospitals, where they will scan the packs for them. They upload the data to a HSE server, and then when the packs come into the hospitals, the data is pulled down and it's decommissioned in the hospitals. So sometimes what can happen is the packs have been scanned in the tote. Sometimes packs can fall out of the tote and end up in a different tote, and they can end up getting decommissioned at different locations. So it took us a while in the beginning to work out what was going on. So we do see some issues with these, and where we see these happening a lot, we go to the wholesalers and we talk to them and ask them to review procedures and just make sure they avoid these things happening. I have given some more information about the common causes of alerts in the backup slides if anyone wants to have a look at those. Okay, so scanning activity in Ireland, there's lots of scanning going on. Like if we look at last week, the end of September, we had 2.18 million scans. Now, not all of those scans are going to be decommissioning scans, because we know, for example, if you use McLernan's software and some people use the facility where you scan and verify dispensing and then you decommission when you scan the bag label out. So if you do that, you're going to have 2 scans for every pack you decommission. We also know that the wholesalers obviously are doing verification scans. We know that there are scans where packs are decommissioned as destroyed, they're locked. So we estimate roughly at any given point in time, 80% of the transactions in the country will be decommissioned as supplied, and the rest will be all the other things. But it is still a lot of activity. Our market size here in Ireland is about 125 million packs per year of prescription medicines that will be in scope of FMD. That's based on IQVIA data. Decommissioning activity across Europe, IMVO gather data and they publish this data. So we're showing up as, I think we're the 3rd worst in Europe. Greece, we're just getting up and running, and Liechtenstein only have 4 pharmacies. So apparently if only one of them is scanning for some reason, so they're pretty low as well. So IMVO gathered this data. Now, just to flag one thing, 76%, it's not too bad. It's getting there. But you'll notice that some of the figures are above 100%. And the reason for that is IMVO is using 2022 market size data as its baseline for calculating this decommissioning rate. So it's overestimating the decommissioning rate, because it's counting the actual number of packs decommissioned versus number of packs supplied into the market based on 2022 data, and the pharmaceutical volume market grows roughly 6% year on year. So if we were to apply, I think for Ireland, the figure they're working off there is 107 million packs, where if we were to apply the 125 million packs, it will bring that figure down a little bit. But we're probably talking roughly 70% of packs are decommissioned here and 30% aren't. So just a few practical tips from FMD. Again, these based on some of the questions we got. We just want to remind you of the guidance on scanning unlicensed medicines, or EMPs, which is basically not to scan them. Now, if there were EU packs, the system will be able to find them and decommission them. But because it's so messy, scan, don't scan. And we do see problems sometimes with UK packs coming in. We've had a lot of French packs arrive into the market, Utrogestin, with tens of thousands of them last year that came in from Switzerland. And unfortunately, when they had left the EU to go to Switzerland, they'd all been decommissioned as exported. And when they all arrived back in here, every single one of them that was scanned here generated already decommissioned alerts. So this advice is obviously also relevant to UK packs because they are now exempt medicinal products. So if you know a pack is ULM, don't scan it. The system may not recognise the pack. If you inadvertently scan it and get alert, you may supply the pack. So notwithstanding, so normally we would say you've got to wait until you know what's going on. Here we're saying you can go ahead and supply the pack unless you've some reason to believe that the falsified medicine is involved. So you would be looking at the pack. You just make sure it looks right. That it the packaging as you would expect, and or you don't see any reason to believe the pack's been interfered with. So that would be, for example, if you get an anti-tampering device that looks a bit something dodgy has happened to it. Obviously, if the pack is flagged as expired, recalled, withdrawn, stolen, or destroyed, you can't supply that. Just really important to check the anti-tampering device. Now, one thing to flag to you, when you scan an unlicensed medicine, the product name may not display on screen. And in fact, unfortunately, with the UK packs now, it may not flag that the packs are expired, again, because the way the UK system was disconnected from the EMVS, and it was a UK IMVO made the decision on how that disconnection took place. I suppose from a UK pack point of view, if we want to try and cut down the alerts associated with these packs, you need to make your staff aware that they will generate alerts or exceptions if they're scanned, and that the only way to prevent these is not to scan them. And we know many pharmacies don't scan them. We know many pharmacies have decided, do you know what, I'm just going to keep scanning. But the problem is every single one of them, you will get an alert for an exception. And I bring you back to the point, with all alerts, there has to be, the problem is you could then, with all this noise from all these UK packs, lose sight of an alert on an Irish pack that could potentially be an indicator of falsification. So the noise may distract you from finding something that does need really to be looked into in detail until you're absolutely sure there's nothing going on, with our help and the input we will get from the MAH. We sent out guidance cards about the Windsor Framework last December, so you might consider having these to hand in the dispensary, and just reminding people again. And we've just given you a link if you want to download the cards. And if you have any queries, you can contact us at our service desk as well. I just want to flag the decommission at another location alerts. There can be a number of root causes for this type of alert, including the following red flag cause. Now, obviously, these are rare, but these can happen. So the same serial number could be used on different falsified packs by counterfeiters. The other thing is that packaging of legitimate decommission packs is very valuable to counterfeiters, particularly there have been incidents with Humira, with the packaging being recycled. They fill it with fake medicines and then reintroduce it into the supply chain. So if you see these alerts in your firms, you won't have enough information because you don't know what the other decommissioning location is. You won't have sufficient information to be able to draw any conclusions about the authenticity of the pack. And you need to contact us because we can look and see what the pack was decommissioned. Now, if, for example, you borrowed the pack from another pharmacy and they did actually put a note in it to say it was already decommissioned, and you did get then, when you scanned it again, a decommissioned alert, then I think it'd be reasonable to assume that that's what's happened. But, in the absence of that type of note, you need to look into it. So you need to find a genuine reason for the prior decommissioning and the falsification has been ruled out, because these could be real indicators that the pack has already been, it is a falsified pack. Borrowings, we have some guidance on borrowing. So when you're lending the pack, if you're not sure what the status of the pack is, just do a verification scan. If you can reactivate the pack, so if the 10-day window hasn't passed, you can reactivate it. If you can't reactivate it and the status is supplied, just put a note with the pack when you're sending it to the other pharmacy to tell them that. The same in the other pharmacy when you get it. You can also do a verification scan if you're not sure. Obviously, if you get a note saying that they've already decommissioned, then just if you're not sure, if the other pharmacy isn't sure whether they decommissioned it or not, you can contact us and we can check where that pack was decommissioned before. So basically, you just need to ask a few questions. And again, these guidance cards are available on our website and we can send them out again, or you can download them if you want. We just want to talk a bit about IMVO alerts. So this is the alert management system that we use to gather all the information about alerts. We use it for our own internal record keeping. We know wholesalers use it for their internal record keeping of investigations. We know MAHs use it. We would recommend you use it yourselves for your investigations, particularly if you've made a decision to supply a pack that's generating an alert. I think it's useful to have a record to explain what your rationale was. So say, for example, the pack has been scanned twice in the pharmacy, that you've actually entered that into the NVS alerts and you've gone ahead and supplied on that basis. Or for example, you suspected there was a problem with your scanner, you reconfigured it, you scanned it again and the pack was fine. Then you can enter all of that and keep that record to hand in case any queries ever arise. So we send you a one-time link by email after the alert is generated. We will also send you a reminder, I think it's 2 working days later and then another 4 working days after that. Some people have an NMBS alerts account, so you can actually log in and see all your alerts. If you want to set one up, just contact us and we'll get that done for you. One of the asks, I asked the team, was there any particular piece of information they wanted me to share with you? And they said it's really helpful when you enter information. Lots of people are entering information, but if you write something like procedural error, just explain what exactly happened. So say, for example, we scanned the pack twice, so then we know exactly what the issue was. If you can't identify a root cause for the alert on your side, that's perfectly good feedback. That's really useful feedback because then we know to focus on the MAH side of things. We would prefer if you use NMBS alerts because it's easier for us to see, it's easier for the MAH to see. You have a record of the communication, but if you want, you can also email us or phone us with any feedback. Scanning then, a few things. Just plan your scanner numbers and locations to facilitate optimal workflow in the dispensary. Because certainly what we've seen from time to time is people have one scanner for a busy dispensary, or they do the scanning, they do the picking and the labeling, and then they take the basket off to another laptop or another PC, tip it all out again and scan it again. And we've seen, and they'd say themselves that they miss something. So just think about how it's good workflow design. And I know it's something the IPU is very interested in, so it's certainly something to think about. And we know there's some pharmacies who've got great setups. If you're using a wireless scanner, you need to be close enough to the device with the software the scanner is actually picked up. One thing to watch out for is caps lock isn't switched on your keyboard, because the problem is if it's switched on, the batch IDs containing caps that'll be misread by your scanner, they'll turn them to lowercase and it'll cause an alert. I say if we see a pattern of this happening in your firms, we'll probably phone you anyway and just point it, just tell you we think this has happened, but we know people are spotting it themselves now. If you think your scanner is not working right, you can actually reconfigure your scanner. I found it really odd to think that you can actually scan a few barcodes and that reconfigures the scanner, but that's actually how it works. And we have a whole pile of easy to use tools like that on our website. And then if all that fails and still not working, we would suggest you contact your FMD software provider for support. The other thing is to ensure you're in the right scanning mode in your FMD software, because we see people, they turn it on to verification. So the problem is they're scanning away, but they're not being recorded as decommissioning scans. So just make sure you're in the right mode. Software, this is another important thing. And we think, we sometimes, again, I mentioned we contact people about alerts and they don't even know an alert has happened and the pack has been dispensed. And we think in some cases because they simply haven't seen it. So it's important to make sure that when you scan a pack that you actually can see the response on screen, so that you know if follow-up action is needed. If your FMD software has been updated and you're asked to do something, please do that as soon as possible, because we have seen situations where older versions of software can lead to alerts. Also be aware if you put other new software on your PC and you might have other software updates like antivirus update, that can sometimes impact FMD software in the same way you might update your Windows or your Microsoft applications, and sometimes that, everyone complains about Teams the week after Windows updates. So just watch out for those things happening. contact your software provider for support in the first instance. And if you're changing software provider and you need new client credentials and things like that, contact us if you need any support. Just one thing to flag, if you get any vaccines in from the NCCS and there's stickers on them, don't obviously decommission them again. We are aware that there's some movement of flu vaccines from GPs into community pharmacies. Just be aware that if you get any vaccines from GPs, surgeries, that those vaccines will have been decommissioned for them by the NCCS, so don't decommission them again because they will cause alerts. Just very briefly, the PSI have been doing a series of themed inspections, and what's quite useful is they publish the learnings and insights now on the website. And in fact, this is something I would have spent many years working in AIFA and dealing with the HPRA, and the HPRA would always have published lots of information on their inspection findings, and this information would be regarded as very useful by companies in terms of making sure you're meeting the expectations of the regulator. So we've included them on the slides, but I just encourage you to go in and have a look yourselves on the website. So the PSI, based on what they have seen in the inspections first half of this year, they have recommended targeted improvements in the following areas. So SOPs and staff training, having a good SOP and FMD operational management that accurately reflects the operation is essential. Big one is locums. We hear a lot of incidents of locums not scanning, locums not understanding what to do. So we have done training for locums, but it's important that you are mindful of that when you bring in locums. Training is very important for staff, strong governance then, and the PSI, calls out the fact of the role of the supervising pharmacist in ensuring that everything, all the procedures are in place, that have been implemented and followed consistently. Dispensary workflow and software issues. So again, the PSI has called out here good governance, proactive operational management. They have again mentioned that locums, the importance of making sure locums are familiar with the pharmacy's dispensing workflow and the software, that you have an adequate number of scanners. They've mentioned that. Now, the question of what's adequate is up to yourself, really, based on your own needs in the pharmacy. And then finally, they also draw attention to maintenance of software and troubleshooting with your software provider. So again, that's just based on the things that they've seen. So they will be things to look at to see how are you covering those off. We do get, someone raised a query about what do I do when the PSI asks me to justify my percentage decommission. And I suppose we just want to give some high level guidance about how you might approach this. First of all, the bottom line is all prescription medicines bearing safety features authorised for sale in Ireland have to be decommissioned. They only have to be decommissioned once, but they all have. So every pack that comes into your pharmacy has to be decommissioned. So these are the PA packs, so the ones with the EU marketing authorisation numbers. If you're asked to explain your decommissioning activity to the PSI with reference to your daily audit report, you need to keep in mind your daily audit report may not correspond fully to dispensing decommission, prescription only packs decommissioned for supplied. So you need to consider in any given day the makeup of your daily audit report. So first of all, packs can only be decommissioned and supplied once, and this must be done when the pack is forced open. Again, that's a delegated regulation requirement. You may have several dispensings from that pack all been recorded in your daily audit trail, but only one decommissioning transaction will be recorded in the IMVS. And that might have been a week ago, the first time you opened the pack. So again, you'll have to look at this when you're trying to reconcile the two things. If your scanner is used in verification modes, none of the scans will be recorded as decommissioning scans. So you could be scanning away, but none of them are coming up as decommissioning scans. So that's something to watch out for. Again, some of the items dispensed will be medical devices and reimbursable OTCs that are not subject to FMD. Again, if you scan these, the barcode will not be recognised and they won't count, they're just not decommissioned. They can't be decommissioned. Again, the numbers of EMPs, ULMs that you use in your pharmacy and whether or not you scan those, if you're using lots of them and you're scanning them all, the ones you get from EU countries, they will decommission fine, but the ones sourced in the UK will not be decommissioned if they're scanned because, again, there's no UK system to do it against. So I just want to mention very briefly the new IMVO Corporate Strategy 25 to 27. And I suppose it's just to remind, what our purpose is and the other things we do. So our core purpose is running the IMVS, making sure it does its job every day. Akin to that, then we enable and support our stakeholders using the system. And then the third piece is we add value to our stakeholders. And by stakeholders, we mean our members. So we have the 5 members I mentioned already, the IMVS users, that's yourselves and the manufacturers, and the patients then and other stakeholders. Obviously, patients are at the core of everything we do. It's all about patient safety. and hence our high-level purpose, protecting Ireland's patients from falsified medicines by operating the IMVS. Our corporate strategy summary, so we have our vision is a secure and sustainable supply chain where patients are confident about the authenticity of prescription medicines they receive in the Irish healthcare system. Our mission, so our vision is where are we aiming to get to? Our mission is, what do we do and why do we do it? We manage the IMVS to assure patients in Ireland about the authenticity of the prescription medicines, and we harness IMVO's potential to enhance the security and sustainability of the medicine supply chain. So that's new, the latter part of that, and I'll explain in a moment what that looks like. We have 4 strategic pillars in our strategy, and there's a series of activities or initiatives set out under each of them. Patient safety, partnership, leadership, and excellence. And then the values that by which we operate is trust. So you trust in our system. We build trust amongst our members. Collaboration, both nationally and across Europe. We are ambitious about what we can do with this system. We are agile, and then finally innovative. So what's new in the strategy, and I just want to, I suppose, draw your attention to some of this to say we are thinking about what are we doing long term with this system. It's not just we have a barcode in every pack and we're scanning every pack and it's all just doing one FMD check. That's really, people wonder what's the point, even though we would argue these packs, all these scans are helping to keep fakes out of Europe, but we can do more with the system. So what we want to do is focus on leveraging our knowledge of the medicine supply chain. Because we're unique in Ireland that we have a connection with every single point in the medicine supply chain. We have a lot of experience rolling out a major IT project, both nationally and across Europe, and collaborating closely with counterparts across Europe. And what we want to do is benefit IMVS users, our members, and patients. The types of things that we're starting work on, we're exploring how we can contribute to addressing the problem of medicine shortages. We want to share our expertise in change management and digital transformation to support the rollout of the Digital Health Framework for Ireland and ICT initiatives in the healthcare system. So obviously we're very interested in the new IPU Community Pharmacy Agreement, which is very strong on these themes. We're also going to establish a multi-stakeholder supply chain forum to identify and advocate for enhancements in supply chain security, efficiency and sustainability. So we want to bring people together to discuss the sort of high-level topics and look to see how we can make things better in the medicine supply chain. And this one in particular is one that the Department of Health and the HPRA are very interested in. So we got them to look at the strategy and the PSI to make sure that they were happy with the direction we were taking. And then I think the last one is also really interesting. Work with policymakers, EMVS colleagues and other stakeholders to explore the use of barcodes for the benefit of supply chain partners and patients. So how can we use the barcode so the scan is doing more than an FMD compliance check, that there are other things we can do with that. So very briefly, we have had some changes in the EU pharma legislation is undergoing review. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to fly through these last couple of slides. There's a big revision of the EU pharma legislation underway at the moment. So this happens roughly every 20 years. They review the legislation, and I've given you a link there if you want to have a look at what's going on. But what's interesting from an FMD perspective is, first of all, the purposes for which the competent authorities may access data in the repository system or in the MVS. Currently, they can access data for 4 purposes. 1, investigating suspected falsifications. 2, reimbursement. Now, that's not used in Ireland, but other countries do use the data in the system and the barcode scans for reimbursement. And also pharmacovigilance and pharmacoepidemiology. Now, there's been very little discussion about how the system data could be used for the last 2. But what's interesting is the latest draft of the new legislation actually talks about using the data in the system to monitor any expected, potential or actual shortage of a medicine, as well as to assess the general supply situation to avoid shortages. So it's interesting to see, given how significant the shortage problem is across Europe, the idea is you use all available data sources to try and give you information and try and predict what's coming down the tracks and see, can you predict a shortage earlier, maybe by noticing that the upload patterns have changed in the MVS. The second piece that's interesting is electronic package leaflets. So the proposal now is that companies must provide leaflets in electronic form as well as in paper form. A lot of interest in how this would be done. And what we were really interested to see over the summer, EMA issued a reflection paper on making what they call electronic product information, EPI. That would be SBCs and package leaflets available via things like using smartphones to scan the 2D barcode printed on the medicine packages. So it's really interesting to see starting to see the 2D barcode could be the vehicle by which the electronic package leaflet is made available. So we see a lot of movement in this space, and we ultimately see the barcode scanning becoming really interesting over the next few years, what it will deliver beyond the simple FMD compliance check. One question we got was integration of FMD into HIMS, as it's called. So HIMS is the Hospital Medicines Management System, which has been rolled out by the HSE across all the hospital pharmacy departments as part of overall plans to improve e-health service delivery in Ireland. What's interesting is they've now started to link the FMD software used in the HSE called Easy FMD and HIMS. And what happens now is that a HIMS hospital completes the FMD scan. It receives the product into stock as well as verifying the product, integrating the FMD scan in the barcode receipt. So effectively, it will allow stock management to be fed with data from the barcodes. So 7 hospitals are live with this and using this interface, and they're going to finish phase 1 this year, and phase 2 then will commence next year. And if anyone's got any questions about HIMS, particularly any of you in the HSE, in the email address is there for you. So again, really interesting to see the HSE is now really integrating the FMD into the hospital medicines management system. And again, that's something that, maybe we'll see much more of that over the coming years with the pharmacy systems. So for example, when you scan a pack, the barcode maybe goes into a stock management system, maybe it goes into the patient records. If you want to do a patient recall, you'll be able to quickly generate a list of which patients got the packs. So very quickly, I won't spend too much time with this. We have various pieces of support available. I just put up our team here because I just want to flag to you the people that you might be talking to. So just at the bottom of the slide there, our admin and comms executive, Sarah, manages the IMVS registration and connection queries. So some of you may have spoken to her. And then we have Paul and Nicola day to day. They manage alert and scanning queries, and they'll be the ones to contact you if there's any queries about alerts. Our support desk is open weekdays, Saturdays and Sundays. It's open till 8 o'clock in the evening. So you have the contact details there. And if you want to contact us about an alert, use NMBS alerts or email. We have various other pieces of information available on our website. We have guidance videos. If you want to check if the system is running, you can actually check it on our website. There's a link from the homepage of our website. One thing the operations team have asked me to really emphasize that we do provide bespoke support sessions for pharmacies by phone, Zoom or Teams or in person. So we've actually gone to visit pharmacies. In fact, we really, if you'd like to invite any of our team out, it's great from our point of view. They get to see what goes on in a pharmacy and they have a much better understanding of what you're dealing with day to day. So again, just email us if you want to do that. And we have published various FMD reference cards and they're available on request, and there are some examples. And other than that, then there's a series of website addresses there and links to legislation and so on. So that was a hop, skip, and a gallop. So I'll stop sharing here and see if there are any questions in the chat. I see there's a few.
Thanks, Leonie. Yeah, the first one there starts with Chi. So does it matter if a product is scanned more than once, or is it mandatory to decommission every pack the first time it's scanned? Apologies if you've already touched on this.
Okay. No, it's already fine. I'll just clarify. So basically, every pack has to be decommissioned once, and you do that the first time it's open. Okay, so you don't decommission it again. And if you try to decommission it again, you'll actually get a response that'll tell you pack has already been decommissioned. So it'll generate alerts. You could verify the pack. So the verification scan won't generate an alert because you might actually just want to double check whether you decommissioned it or not. So just one decommissioning scan per pack. Now, this was a problem last year. This has pretty much gone away as a problem. People seem to have got their heads around this. We see very few alerts related to this. Can I check if you do a verification scan, does that generate any alerts, for example? Yeah, if you, for example, do a verification scan and it says pack unknown, that would generate a red cross because that indicates there isn't a serial number known in the system for that. So it could be it's a fake serial number. It could be the scanner has misread the serial number. It could be the software has misread it, but it has to be investigated. What's the latest version of FMD software? It's whatever. So there are a number of different suppliers of FMD software in the marketplace. It's whatever is the latest version of whichever one of those software systems you're using. And if you're not sure if you're on the latest version, just contact the software provider and double check what version you're on. Just make sure, ask them to tell you, am I on the latest version? Does it matter if the medicine is applied twice, either because of a sensitive scan or just human error? Yeah, you just need to tell us that that's what you've done because that has opened an alert. So the problem is we need to close it. So you just pop an email into us and say, look, we've scanned the thing twice, and you can go ahead and supply the package. You just need to tell us that that's what happened. So just pop a message into NMBS alerts, scanned the pack twice, and that's fine, we'll close it. Scanning a brand name shows on screen the INN. Yeah, this is definitely an issue, and this is actually an issue that has big. There's a lot of discussion going on about this at European level. The data that appears on screen on your system is the data that's entered by the manufacturers when they upload the data to the European hub. What we've realised, and we would have seen it over the last few years, is the quality of the data entry at times is not great. So we've seen misspelt names, we've seen, the INN in the place of the product name. It is something we've been flagging to the manufacturers. And what was really interesting was at a meeting in Brussels a couple of years ago, we realized they didn't actually realize this information was displayed on screen. Nobody ever told them this information is really important because this is what's displayed on screen. So if you do come across these examples, please do send us an email, because what we do is we'll send it back to the manufacturer and ask them to fix it, because it's very confusing. Like, I agree, it shouldn't be happening. It should match. But it is a human data, lack of proper quality control. And in fact, IMVO is exploring putting in place some sort of a QC check to actually check the product data that's been uploaded, but there will have to be some sort of a cleanup exercise done on the ones, like there's thousands of products set up in the system. Again, it's definitely an issue. And, we have said to the manufacturers, this undermines confidence in the system and the wrong name appears on screen. So you really need to sort this out. Okay, are there any more questions or anyone wants to ask me?
Thanks, Leonie. That was really comprehensive. Thank you. And it's fantastic to see all the supports that you offer as well, and your team offers. So thank you for outlining those. If there aren't any other questions, then we'll begin to conclude the webinar. Again, we would appreciate feedback you have on this survey, or give us tips for any future webinars that you'd like to see. Just to alert you to, of course, to remind you that it's always a good idea to either start a CPD cycle arising from this webinar tonight. You can complete it as you sit and do it, or at a future stage, but to flag that you have engaged in this. And finally, just to say that our next webinar is actually next week, and it's quite timely as it's to discuss the influenza and COVID-19 vaccination programs for autumn and winter. And that'll be brought to you by Dr. Louise Marin and Eileen Butler of the HSE National Immunisation Office. So hopefully we'll see you there. But again, all these webinars are recorded and posted onto the IAOP website within a few days of recording. So thank you very much, Leonie, again, for such an excellent presentation this evening. It was very informative, and thank you to all those who joined us, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Marie Claire. See you all soon. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, Leonie.